My name is Avellini. If you saw me on the street, you would think I was the lucky one. The woman with the charming partner, the perfect smile, the life that looked polished from the outside. That was the image we sold to the world. But behind closed doors, I was not his partner. I was his safety net, his lifeline, the wallet he reached for whenever his past caught up to him. The first time he asked me for money, it was wrapped in romance. He kissed my hand, told me he had hit a temporary snag, and promised to pay me back by the end of the week. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Love, I told myself, was about trust. By the third time, it was no longer a request, it was an expectation. Rent he had forgotten. Car payments that had slipped his mind. Bills that never reached his inbox. Each excuse came with a smile, and each smile cost me more. What I did not realize was that it was never about temporary struggles. It was about his pattern, the way he lived his life. His debts were not accidents. They were his lifestyle. And slowly, quietly, he pulled me into it, until my bank account became his cushion, my future his escape hatch. The turning point came one evening when there was a knock on my front door. I opened it to find two men in pressed suits, holding envelopes with my name on them. First, I thought it was a mistake. But then I read the papers. Legal documents. Debt notices. Loans I had never signed for. And yet, somehow, my name was listed as guarantor. He had used me. Not just my love. Not just my savings. He had tied my name, my credit, my stability to his reckless mistakes. My hand shook as I flipped through the pages, seeing number after number, totals that made my stomach twist. He had drained me dry. And still, he smiled at me every night as if nothing were wrong. I did not cry. I did not scream. Instead, I sat in silence, letting the weight of it settle in my chest. Because in that silence, I realized something life-changing. If he had made me pay for his debts, then I would make him pay with something he could never repair, never repay, never escape. His reputation. His carefully built image. He thought he was clever, hiding behind charm and manipulation. But he had underestimated the woman who had carried him. He had underestimated what happens when the one you exploit decides she is done playing victim. That night, as he walked in humming like nothing had happened, I looked at him with a calm he could not read. Inside, the decision was already made. I would no longer be the woman who signed his papers. I would be the woman who wrote his ending. And my first move? It would be so subtle, so quiet, that he would not even realize the game had started, until it was far too late. The morning after those debt collectors came to my door, I woke up to the sound of him whistling in the kitchen. He was making pancakes, my favorite. The smell of butter filled the air. But instead of comfort, it felt like poison. He flipped one onto my plate, kissed my forehead and said, "Nothing to worry about, Avellini. Everything's under control." But everything was not under control. Because in my purse, tucked deep inside the envelope the men had given me, was proof that he had betrayed me in a way I could never forgive. At first, I thought maybe he had just put my name down without realizing the consequences. Maybe he was careless. Maybe he was desperate. But as I read the contracts line by line, my stomach dropped further and further. Each page had my signature. A signature I had never written. Perfectly forged, like someone had studied the curves of my handwriting until they could mimic it flawlessly. He had not just used me. He had stolen my identity, my name, my future. Later that week, I confronted him. I held up the papers and asked him to explain. He laughed. Actually laughed. "Come on, Avellini. You're so dramatic. It's just paperwork. What matters is us, right? Don't ruin what we have with this overreaction." That laugh was the moment something inside me snapped. He had done it deliberately. He knew exactly what he was doing. And to him it was nothing more than a joke. That night, while he slept beside me, I opened his laptop. I knew the password, the name of his high school football team, as predictable as every lie he told. My hands trembled as I searched through his files, his emails, his messages. What I found made the debts look like child's play. He had a trail of women before me. Women he had drained, used, discarded. Some had filed reports. Some had tried to take him to court. But somehow he had always managed to wriggle free, leaving them broken while he walked away clean. And now I was just the next name on his list. I sat there staring at the glowing screen, my reflection mirrored back at me in the glass. "Avellini, The woman who had believed in love, who had defended him when her friends whispered warnings, who had emptied her account to help. I realized I was not just dealing with betrayal. I was dealing with a predator. The next morning he handed me flowers. A cheap grocery store bouquet wrapped in plastic. "For my girl," he said, smiling like nothing had changed. I smiled back. But inside I was finished being his girl. He thought he had one. He thought I was trapped. But what he did not understand was that he had given me the greatest weapon of all, proof. Legal proof. A digital trail. Evidence that could destroy not only his finances but his entire reputation. And I knew exactly what to do with it. Because if he could laugh in my face, then one day soon I would laugh in his, only louder, only sharper, only with the sound of his entire life collapsing around him. The moment I decided to fight back, I knew I needed more than anger. Anger could burn hot, but evidence could burn longer. If I was going to stop Dorian, if I was going to make sure he never used me or anyone else again, I had to build a case so airtight it would suffocate him. I started small. That morning while he showered, I slipped into his office. His desk was a mess of unpaid bills, unopened letters, and scribbled notes about new opportunities. But hidden under a stack of magazines I found what I was looking for. A red leather folder. Inside were documents with my name typed neatly on the top. Loan agreements. Credit card applications. Every single one signed in handwriting that was not mine, but close enough to fool a bank. I photographed each page with my phone, carefully placing them back in order before sliding the folder shut. Next came his emails. At night, when he thought I was asleep, I listened. His typing, the little bursts of laughter when a message came in, the way he whispered into his phone before slipping outside. I waited until he left his laptop open one evening and copied entire threads into a flash drive I bought with cash. The truth unfolded before me in hundreds of messages. He bragged to his friends, men as hollow as him, about how easy it was to find women who believed in him. He called me his perfect catch. He joked about how gullible I was to sign whatever he put in front of me. My chest tightened reading those words, but I kept scrolling, forcing myself to absorb every piece of poison. But the most shocking discovery came one rainy Tuesday afternoon. While folding laundry, I checked his jacket pockets. In one I found a set of unfamiliar keys. They did not fit any door in our apartment. Later that night, curiosity won over fear. I followed him when he left, keeping my distance, my hood pulled low. He drove to the other side of the city and parked outside a small townhouse with green shutters. He knocked once, twice. The door opened, and a woman with long auburn hair pulled him inside. They kissed, and I swear my blood turned to ice. So that was where my rent money, my savings, my life had gone. Not just to debts. To her. The next morning I returned while he was at work. My hand shook as I slid the mysterious keys into the lock, one by one, until one clicked. The house smelled faintly of vanilla candles. It was cozy, feminine. Pictures of her and Dorian sat on the mantel, smiling, happy, as if I never existed. But what she did not know, and what he did not expect, was that I was not leaving empty-handed. I searched the drawers and closets. Bank statements. Receipts. Credit card charges on accounts tied back to me. I stuffed them into a folder and photographed everything. By the time I left, I had built a library of proof, enough to make sure he would never crawl out from under it. Still, I needed more. One evening, I invited my childhood friend, Clara, over for wine. I showed her the evidence, every document, every screenshot. She looked at me with wide eyes. "Avellini, this is enough to bury him. But if you want the world to believe you, if you want him to pay the way he made you pay, you'll need to go public. Not just court. Public." Her words sank deep. Court could punish him. But humiliation? That could destroy him. I realized then that my plan had to be twofold. The law would handle his debts and fraud, but I would handle his reputation. The man who mocked me, who thought I was too weak, too naive, I would make sure his name became a warning whispered by everyone he ever wanted to impress. And so I kept digging every day, every night. Each lie I uncovered became another weapon in my arsenal. Dorian thought he was untouchable. But with every photograph, every document, every witness I gathered, I could feel the walls beginning to close in. And when the time came, I would be the one to slam the door shut. When you are betrayed, you learn fast who stands beside you and who steps back. I knew I could not fight Dorian alone. He had charm, he had lies polished into diamonds, and he had the arrogance of a man who thought he could talk his way out of anything. If I wanted to break through that armor, I needed allies, people who would see through him as clearly as I did, people who could help me turn the truth into a weapon. The first person I called was Clara. She had already seen some of the evidence, but that night I invited her over again. I spread everything across my dining table, photographs, contracts, emails, bank statements, even the pictures of him wrapped around the woman at the townhouse. Clara walked slowly around the table, her hand pressed to her mouth. Avellini, this isn't just betrayal. This is fraud. This is theft. You have to bring this to someone who can act. Her certainty steadied me. Then I need a lawyer, I whispered. Clara did not hesitate. She had a cousin who worked at a firm downtown, specializing in financial fraud. The next day, I found myself sitting across from a sharp-eyed woman named Denise. Her suit was immaculate, her questions sharp. I laid out the folder, one piece at a time, watching her expression shift from professional distance to cold fury. You have more than enough, she said at last. Forged signatures, financial misrepresentation, misappropriation of funds. He could face charges. But court takes time. If you want him punished socially, not just legally, you'll need a second strategy. That was exactly what I wanted. I told her everything, how he laughed at me, how he mocked my trust, how he used my savings to build a double life. Denise leaned back in her chair and studied me. Then you must be willing to endure the spotlight, she warned. Because once we start, there's no turning back. Are you prepared for that? I thought of his smirk, the way he belittled me, the way he paraded another woman in a house built on my money. My voice did not shake when I said, yes. While Denise began drafting legal papers, Clara helped me with the other half of the plan. Together we mapped out the places where Dorian loved to shine, charity events, business mixers, family dinners. He craved attention like oxygen. If I took that away or worse, turned it against him, it would break him faster than any courtroom. We worked late into the night, coffee cups crowding the table, our whispers sharp with purpose. Clara scrolled through his social media, bookmarking posts where he bragged about new ventures and expanding opportunities. Each one was a lie I could dismantle with a single document. But the plan needed more than strategy. It needed timing. That was when fate handed me the perfect opportunity. An invitation arrived in the mail. A company gala celebrating leaders of the community. Dorian's name was on the program. He had been chosen to give a speech about integrity. Integrity. The word nearly made me laugh out loud. I showed the invitation to Clara, and her eyes gleamed. This is it. This is where you end him. But you have to do it carefully. One wrong step and he'll spin it against you. Denise agreed. She suggested I gather my proof into a polished presentation, something irrefutable, undeniable. If you present this publicly with clarity and confidence, he won't just lose credibility. He'll lose his mask. For the first time in months, I felt stronger than fear. The gala would be my stage, and Dorian would not see me coming. Still, doubt crept in at night. What if no one believed me? What if his charisma was stronger than the truth? Clara sat with me through those storms, gripping my hand. You're not weak, Avellini. You're not naive. You're the one who will finish this. I clung to her words. By the end of that week, my apartment no longer looked like a home. It looked like a war room. Charts, timelines, folders stacked high, flash drives labeled in careful handwriting. Every lie he told had a counterpoint. Every boast had a receipt waiting to pierce it. And in the center of it all was me. No longer his victim. No longer the quiet woman he thought would stay silent. The night of the gala was circled on my calendar in red. And with every sunrise I grew more certain. He had planned his grandest performance, but it would be my script that played out. The gala was just 2 weeks away. Every second became a countdown. Every hour a chance to sharpen the blade I would aim at Dorian's perfect mask. He thought the night would belong to him. What he did not know was that I was writing a different script, one where his lies collapsed under the weight of the truth. I started with the documents. Denise, precise and relentless, walked me through each one. We organized the forged signatures, the fraudulent transfers, the payments he had funneled into accounts under another name. Every page told a story. and together they painted the picture of a man who built his lifestyle on deceit. Don't drown them in numbers, Denise warned as she flipped through the pages. Choose the sharpest blades. The receipts with his handwriting, the transfers dated the same night he swore he was working late, the picture of him outside that townhouse. Simplicity will destroy him faster than complexity. I nodded. I wanted it clean. Brutal but undeniable. Clara and I worked on the second part, the delivery. We practiced late at night in my living room. I would stand holding the folder while she sat across from me, arms folded, pretending to be the audience. The first time my voice trembled. The second time I stumbled over the dates. By the fifth time Clara's eyes lit with pride. There she is, she whispered. The woman he never saw coming. I recorded myself, listening back to the sound of my own determination. Every pause, every emphasis mattered. I wanted the words to land like hammers, not loud but heavy, final. Then came the visual trap. Denise suggested creating a slideshow. Not with flashy designs but with raw evidence. Bank statements, emails, screenshots. Nothing more. When they see his name on the transfer next to hers, it will be the end. He cannot explain it away. The thought of his face when the screen lit up made my chest tighten. Fear and anticipation wove together until I could not tell them apart. But the plan was more than proof and practice. It was about timing. Dorian loved applause. He would expect the climax of the evening to be his speech. That was when I would move. Not before, not after, but in the moment when every eye was already on him. To make it happen, Clara and I worked with precision. She would be in the crowd, ready to cue the slideshow. Denise would sit near the stage, holding copies of the legal papers in her briefcase. And I would sit silent until the moment came, the picture of loyalty, the woman by his side. That was the cruelest part of all. For the plan to work, I had to keep pretending. I had to smile when he rehearsed his speech, nod when he asked me what dress I would wear, kiss him when he left for another late night at the office. Every false embrace burned, but I endured it. Each moment of pretense was another brick in the stage I was building for his downfall. At night, doubt gnawed at me. What if he suspected? What if someone warned him? I woke from dreams of him ripping the folder from my hands, laughing, turning the tables. But every morning the plan was still intact. He was still blind, still arrogant, still convinced of his invincibility. One evening Clara squeezed my hand. He's not watching you, Avellini. He's too busy watching himself. That's his weakness. Use it. She was right. He never once asked why I seemed distant. He thought my silence was obedience, not calculation. The night before the gala, I stood before the mirror in the dress I had chosen. Not glamorous but sharp, commanding. I whispered the words I would speak. Each syllable felt like a blade being honed. I slipped the folder into my bag, my fingers brushing over the edges of the papers that would end him. Dorian was in the other room, humming as he polished his shoes. He looked up when I entered, smiling with that smug confidence that had once charmed me. Tomorrow's the big night, he said. Our future starts there. I smiled back, the smile of a woman he thought he still owned. Yes, I whispered. Our future starts there. But only I knew whose future would actually begin. The day of the gala arrived with a kind of silence that felt staged, like the world itself was holding its breath. I woke before dawn, my heart pounding, my mind running through every detail of the plan. The folder sat on my desk, waiting like a loaded weapon. By midnight, it would no longer be mine to carry. Dorian was calm, humming as he brewed coffee. He wore his favorite navy suit, polished to perfection, his tie already knotted with military precision. He looked like a man who believed the night would belong to him, and that belief was the one thing I needed to protect until the very last second. You look nervous, he said as he handed me a cup. His smile was indulgent, almost patronizing. Don't worry. Tonight, I'll make sure everyone sees how much you've supported me. This is as much your victory as it is mine. The words made bile rise in my throat. My victory? He had no idea what I had prepared. By late afternoon, Clara and Denise met me at the venue. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, gold-trimmed mirrors, and rows of tables draped in white linen. A stage dominated the far wall, already set with a podium, a microphone, and the screen that would soon betray him. Everything's ready, Clara whispered as she handed me the remote that would cue the slideshow. I'll be in the back by the AV table. When you nod, I'll start it. Denise pressed a thin envelope into my palm. Inside were copies of the legal papers, pristine and damning. If he tries to deny it, you waive these. They're official. He can't bury them. I tucked the envelope into my bag, my hand shaking slightly. Tonight I wasn't just a woman scorned. Tonight I was executioner, judge, and jury. But then the pivot came sharp and unexpected. An hour before the guests arrived, the head of the event committee rushed up to me, breathless. The projector isn't working, she said. Something about the cable. We've called the technician, but it may take hours. If it doesn't get fixed, we won't have visuals tonight. The blood drained from my face. No slideshow. No projection of evidence onto the wall for everyone to see. My clean, undeniable proof would vanish without that screen. Clara's eyes widened when she heard. This changes everything, she hissed. We can't just hold up pieces of paper. It won't have the same effect. I wanted to scream. Weeks of planning, every rehearsal, every detail had revolved around that screen. Without it, I would be forced to improvise, and improvisation was dangerous. Denise steadied me with a firm hand on my shoulder. Breathe, she said. You don't need the screen. You are the weapon. Your voice, your presence, your timing. The papers are backup. But the real show is you. I clung to her words. My pulse thundered, my throat dry. Could I really hold an entire ballroom's attention with nothing but my voice and a folder of documents? The technician fiddled with cables as guests began arriving, their laughter filling the air, their heels tapping against marble floors. My stomach twisted with every passing minute. Dorian moved among them like a king greeting his court, his hand brushing my back as if I were a trophy he could display. Then the second pivot struck. Just before the speeches began, Dorian pulled me aside. His smile was wide, almost giddy. I made a change, he whispered. I asked them to rearrange the order. I'll be speaking first, not last. I want to set the tone of the night. My heart lurched. He had unknowingly flipped my plan upside down. If he spoke first, I would not have the momentum of the evening building toward him. The timing I had obsessed over, the dramatic climax, would be stolen. Clara caught my eye across the room, her expression sharp, questioning. Now or never? I swallowed hard. This was not the night I had planned. The screen was dark, the order was reversed, and I was trembling on the edge of failure. But I also realized something as I watched him straighten his notes, smirk at the crowd, and prepare to ascend the stage. Maybe the plan didn't need the screen. Maybe it didn't need the perfect timing. Maybe all it needed was me. I slipped the envelope into my hand, the papers crackling faintly. My heart slowed, steadied. The night would not belong to him. Not anymore. As Dorian took the stage, basking in the applause, I walked toward the spotlight, silent, steady, certain. The ballroom fell into a hush as Dorian approached the podium. The chandeliers cast a golden glow over his shoulders, the light almost painting him as noble. His voice rolled smooth, confident, polished. He was in his element, a man convinced the night was his coronation. Good evening, he began, his tone rich with self-importance. Tonight we celebrate progress, leadership, and trust. And I stand here humbled by the honor of guiding this company, this community, this vision. The applause swelled. I felt my stomach clench. This was his performance, his masterpiece, the role he had rehearsed for years. But behind the mask I knew the truth. The lies, the debts, the betrayal. As he spoke, my fingers tightened on the envelope in my hand. I felt the sharp edge of the papers press against my skin like a reminder. This wasn't just about anger. This was about justice. He was halfway through his speech when I moved. My heels clicked across the marble floor, echoing louder than the polite laughter rippling at his jokes. Heads turned. Whispers sparked. Dorian faltered for the first time, his eyes flicking toward me. I climbed the small set of stairs beside the stage. My breath was steady. My legs carried me forward with a certainty I hadn't felt in months. He blinked at me, confusion flashing across his face. Nevera? He hissed into the microphone, his voice breaking for the first time all evening. What are you? I took the microphone from its stand. My hand didn't shake. I looked out at the hundreds of faces staring at us, curious, expectant. The moment was heavy, electric, impossible to ignore. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice calm but cutting through the air like glass. "You've heard his version of leadership. You've heard his vision. Now let me tell you about his truth." The crowd shifted, a murmur rolling through them. Dorian reached for the microphone, but I stepped back, holding it firmly. "This man," I continued, "is not who you think he is. The accounts he boasts about, the success he claims, the image he polishes, all of it is built on lies. Lies he thought he could keep hidden. Lies he thought no one would ever expose." Gasps erupted. Dorian's face turned crimson, anger rising, but still he stayed silent, too shocked to act. I pulled the papers from the envelope and held them high. "These," I said, my voice steady, "are the records. The hidden accounts. The debts shifted into my name. The transfers he signed without my consent. I lived with his deceit. Tonight you will see it for yourselves." Clara, from the back of the room, lifted her phone. The technician had failed to fix the projector, but she had prepared for this. She streamed the documents directly onto the monitors flanking the stage, each line magnified for all to read. The room gasped as numbers flashed across the screens, withdrawals, transfers, signatures, all leading back to him. Dorian lunged toward me. "Stop this," he shouted, his voice cracking. But I stood my ground, the microphone amplifying his desperation. "You spent years mocking me, belittling me, using me as your safety net." I said, my words sharp, deliberate. "But tonight the safety net is gone. Tonight everyone sees you for who you really are." The silence that followed was deafening. Then whispers turned into shouts. Faces twisted with shock, betrayal, disgust. His allies backed away. His colleagues shook their heads. Dorian's hands trembled as he tried to gather his notes, his mask slipping completely. Sweat glistened on his forehead. His voice cracked again. "She's lying. She's bitter. She's..." But the screens betrayed him. His signature was undeniable. The dates aligned too perfectly. I looked him dead in the eye. "The only liar here is you." The crowd erupted. Gasps, murmurs, even laughter, but not the supportive kind he had once commanded. The kind that mocked, that condemned, that burned reputations to ash. I lowered the microphone slowly, deliberately, then turned to the crowd one final time. He wanted this night to be his triumph. Instead, let it be his reckoning. The ballroom thundered with noise, shock, disbelief, judgment. And Dorian, for the first time in his life, had no words left to save himself. For a single suspended heartbeat, the ballroom froze. The glittering chandeliers still shone. The champagne still bubbled in crystal flutes, but every pair of eyes was on Dorian. He stood there, crimson and shaking, his notes scattered like fallen leaves around his shoes. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Then the dam broke. "What is this?" a man near the front demanded, his voice sharp. "These documents, they're real, aren't they?" "I knew something was wrong," a woman gasped from the back, clutching her pearls. Murmurs cascaded through the crowd, layering over each other like crashing waves. Some voices rose in anger, others in ridicule. Dorian's sister, seated at one of the front tables, buried her face in her hands. His parents, stoic until this point, shifted uncomfortably. His mother looked away entirely, refusing to meet his gaze, while his father clenched his jaw so tightly I could see the muscles twitch. One of his colleagues stormed toward the stage. "You jeopardized us all, Dorian," he spat, pointing a finger at him. "You dragged our names through your mess." His words hit harder than any physical blow. The laughter started then. It wasn't joyous, it was cruel, biting. Guests whispered behind manicured hands, chuckled into their glasses, sneered as though Dorian were a spectacle rather than a man. He had craved admiration. Instead, he received humiliation. Dorian finally found his voice, though it cracked like glass. "This is not what it looks like," he shouted, but the microphone had been cut. His words reached no further than the first few rows, drowned beneath the chorus of disbelief. I stepped forward once more, still holding the papers. I didn't need to say anything now. The truth had done its work. The silence between my breaths was filled with his collapse. "Is this why the accounts never balanced?" Another board member called out. "We trusted you." A woman I recognized, his so-called business partner, though I had long suspected more, stood frozen by the doorway. Her cheeks were pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. When a few eyes turned toward her, she spun and left in a hurry, the click of her heels fading into nothing. Dorian lunged after her, but security blocked his path. They weren't rough, but they were firm. He was no longer the guest of honor. He was the liability. Clara appeared at my side, slipping her arm into mine with quiet solidarity. "You did it," she whispered, her voice trembling not from fear, but from exhilaration. "You finally did it." I kept my chin high. "No," I said softly. "He did it to himself." The crowd surged with questions now, voices overlapping. How long? What else is hidden? How could he? His reputation unraveled thread by thread before my eyes, each question pulling another piece loose. I watched Dorian crumble. His shoulders sagged. His once confident stride turned into a stumble. He looked smaller now, shrunken in on himself. The man who had mocked me, dismissed me, stolen from me. He was exposed, naked under the glare of truth. Then came the final blow. The chair of the board, a man revered in this circle, stood. His voice cut through the chaos with brutal clarity. "Effective immediately, you are suspended. The board will convene to determine your permanent removal." The room erupted. Gasps. Applause. A few cheers from those who had long resented his arrogance. It was the public execution of his image, and there was no undoing it. Dorian's knees buckled, and for a moment I thought he might actually collapse onto the stage. He steadied himself on the podium, gripping it like a drowning man clutches driftwood. His eyes locked onto mine, wide and desperate. "You think this makes you strong?" he hissed, low enough only I could hear. His breath was hot, his words venomous. "You've destroyed me." I leaned in, close enough for him to see the calm in my eyes. "No, Dorian. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure the world saw it." The flash of cameras punctuated my words. Reporters, bloggers, guests with phones. Everyone captured the fall of Dorian in high definition. His lies were not whispers anymore. They were headlines. I walked off the stage with Clara beside me, the roar of voices echoing behind us. Dorian remained where he stood, trapped in the ruins of his carefully constructed empire. His face, his name, his reputation, all ashes now. And I felt lighter with every step I took. Morning light spilled across my bedroom floor, sharp and merciless, like the truth that had shattered the night before. I woke not to silence, but to the buzz of my phone vibrating endlessly on the nightstand. Messages, emails, calls, all pouring in at once. At first, I thought it might be friends congratulating me quietly, or Clara checking in. But when I opened the first message, my breath caught. It wasn't just local chatter. It was headlines. Fallen executive exposed at gala. Charity leader accused of financial deception. Dorian Hale's collapse captured live. Every outlet had picked it up. National newspapers, gossip blogs, finance journals. His name was everywhere, tied not to his successes but to his disgrace. The photos were brutal. Him red-faced on stage, his notes scattered like confetti, his eyes wild as he tried to claw back control. I scrolled further, almost in disbelief. Comment sections overflowed with ridicule. "Serves him right. I always knew he was too slick. How could his family not have seen it?" The internet had turned him into a cautionary tale overnight. Clara called me then. Her voice crackled with laughter. "Did you see it all? You're trending, Mara. People are calling you fearless." I hadn't thought of myself that way. I had been terrified, my palms sweating, my heart in my throat. But maybe courage wasn't the absence of fear. Maybe it was standing there anyway, holding the paper steady even as my hands shook. "Are you okay?" she asked gently after the laughter faded. I whispered. "For the first time in years, I actually am." Later that morning, as I walked to the cafe near my office, heads turned. Some people approached hesitantly at first. One woman, a stranger, touched my arm. "I saw the video," she said. "You showed us all that truth matters. Thank you." I smiled faintly. I hadn't planned on being anyone's hero. I just wanted to reclaim what had been stolen from me. But the ripple effect was undeniable. Dorian, meanwhile, was drowning. By noon, I received word that he had been officially suspended from his role pending investigation. Sponsors had pulled their funding. Invitations to events were rescinded. His social media accounts went dark. Whether by his choice or the backlash, I didn't know. But the collapse was total. His family bore the brunt too. I heard whispers that his parents had retreated from public view. His sister posted a vague statement online about betrayal close to home. Even his allies were fleeing. Loyalty built on lies cannot hold. The strangest part, though, was how quiet he had become. No fiery denials, no desperate defenses. Just silence. The man who had once filled every room with his booming presence was now absent, reduced to whispers in corridors and mocking headlines. Yet I wasn't entirely free. Revenge, even when just leaves a mark. That night, alone in my apartment, I found myself staring at the ceiling, wondering if he hated me, if he plotted to return somehow. Fear flickered, but it was weaker now, diminished by the strength I had proven to myself. I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window, letting the city's hum wash over me. I thought of the years I had endured his sneers, the way he mocked my contributions, belittled my dreams. He had drained me piece by piece, convincing me I was nothing. And now the world had seen the truth. He was the fraud, not me. The next morning, Clara and I met again, this time not in secret but proudly in public. "What's next?" she asked, sipping her coffee. I paused, considering. My future felt like a canvas, blank and waiting. For so long it had been painted with his colors, his plans, his control. Now it was mine again. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But whatever it is, it will be mine. No more shadows." She grinned. "That's the best revenge of all." Her words lingered with me. The gala had destroyed his reputation. Yes, but what came after was even more powerful. Reclaiming my own life. Choosing joy, not fear. Choosing self-worth, not his approval. By evening, another headline appeared. Mara Clark emerges as symbol of resilience after scandal. I read it twice, stunned. Me? A symbol? Perhaps. Or perhaps just a woman who had been pushed too far and decided to push back. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Dorian had lost everything that mattered to him. And I had regained everything that mattered to me. The story was not just about his fall. It was about my rise. The weeks that followed blurred together like shifting colors on a canvas. Some days were sharp, like red strokes of anger as I remembered the years I had lost. Other days were golden, filled with relief that I had finally reclaimed my life. But every day I woke up with one steady truth. I was free. Free from Dorian's lies. Free from his control. Free from the cage he had built for me while convincing me I had built it myself. I did not pretend it was easy. Freedom comes with weight. There were mornings when my chest still tightened, remembering his voice mocking my efforts, his sneer reminding me that I was too emotional or not tough enough. Ghosts like that do not vanish overnight. They linger. But now they no longer owned me. In the aftermath, my story spread further than I ever imagined. At first, it was just a trending clip, something people shared for the drama of it all. But soon it became something else. Women messaged me quietly, telling me they had stayed silent through betrayals, through dismissals, through lies, because they thought no one would believe them. "You gave me courage," one wrote. Another said, "Watching you stand there made me realize I deserve better too." I cried as I read them. Not because I wanted to be anyone's savior, but because the act of reclaiming my dignity had somehow ignited sparks in others. That felt like the truest revenge of all. His cruelty had not only failed to break me, it had fueled something far greater. Dorian, meanwhile, became a shadow of himself. He avoided public life entirely. His name, once shouted at conferences and etched on plaques, became a cautionary footnote. I heard through whispers that he tried to start anew in another city, but the internet is not so forgiving. His disgrace followed him, stamped into every search result, every whisper. The man who had thrived on attention now lived in exile from it. There was a time I thought revenge would taste like his destruction, that the sight of him unraveling would heal me. And yes, watching him stripped of his false glory was satisfying. But what I learned was this. The sweetest revenge was not just exposing him. It was reclaiming myself. I began to paint again. Something I had abandoned years earlier because he mocked it as a hobby, not a future. My canvases filled with deep blues and fiery oranges, colors of pain and rebirth. I signed each one with my full name, a signature I had once hidden because I thought it unworthy. I reconnected with family, with friends I had pushed away while trying to keep Dorian's world intact. They welcomed me back, no judgment, only warmth. Slowly, I rebuilt my circle, this time on honesty, loyalty, and love that did not demand my silence. One evening, Clara and I sat on her balcony overlooking the city. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. "Exposing him?" I shook my head. "Never." "And everything that came after?" I paused. The weight of the past pressed against me, but so did the lightness of the present. "I regret staying so long," I admitted. "But I don't regret ending it the way I did." He tried to write me out of the story. I took the pen back. She smiled, raising her glass. To taking back the pen. We clinked glasses, laughter soft in the night. And now as I tell this story, I want you, the one listening, to take this with you. Betrayal is meant to break you. It is meant to convince you that you are powerless, that the liar or the cheat holds all the cards. But you are stronger than they think. My revenge was not chaos. It was truth. It was planning, patience, and finally exposure. Yours may look different. It might be leaving quietly with your dignity, or building a life so radiant it overshadows the betrayal. But know this, you are not small. You are not voiceless. The world may try to silence you. Betrayers may try to define you. But when you choose to act, carefully, lawfully, boldly, you hold the power. So if you take anything from me, let it be this. Never let someone else's lies write your ending. Stand tall. Claim your truth. And when the time is right, let the world see exactly who they are, and exactly who you have become. This was my revenge. This was my freedom. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, stories of betrayal turned into empowerment, stories where truth wins in the end, then stay with me. Subscribe. Watch. Share. Because together we are stronger, and together we make sure no one silences us again.